Opera for me, I came into opera and into the profession quite late. I was a chartered accountant before I became an opera singer. It was just 8 years ago that in the year 2000, that I actually took up opera singing professionally full time. I have to say, for personally speaking, it was always the music and the art of singing that appealed to me in many ways more so than opera. Opera was a vehicle for vocal expression, and that's why I was drawn to it. Having said that, having now spent 8 years in it, I think I appreciate a bit more the wonders of opera as its own form. And it is unique. It means, it's very challenging, it's very difficult. It's difficult to stand up on stage and deliver the goods night in and night out, regardless of how you feel personally. The audience is there to be entertained. That's what they've paid to do, and they want to be, and they should be. And that's our job, is to entertain them. But the amount of pleasure one gets from doing that is, it's difficult to explain to people how much pleasure one gets. Seeing people laugh, seeing people cry, seeing people affected, and being part of that entire thing is a tremendous privilege. Not only that, but working with other fantastic musicians and singers, orchestras, directors, conductors, soloists, chorus, everyone pulling together to bring something that is much greater than the individual parts together is something very, very special, and you really have to experience it to appreciate it. So The Barber of Seville is a comedy, and it's a wonderful story about a lover, and he is trying to get hold of his woman, who is being kept by an older man, a doctor, and so he with a friend, Figaro, who is the Barber of Seville, they devise some cunning plans to get into the house and to try and get hold of the woman. The plans don't all go very well to start with, but they keep coming back, and finally, as with all good stories, the lovers get together and everything ends more or less happily ever after. And there's no doubt that it's a wonderful show. This production is very intimate. It's almost a production within a production. So you find that a lot of the chorus people are involved as if they were the audience, which makes it really delightful and very intimate, and involves the audience to a very large extent in what's going on. You'll see certain effects, like the chorus acting as the audience, getting involved with the props, making sure that everything works, and generally it's a fantastic little tight-knit show, and I'm sure that the audience will have a wonderful, wonderful night out. If you think opera is just about dreary, very sophisticated music, you'd better think again, and the only way you're going to find out is to come to this production. So really it's a fantastic comedy. A little bit about the characters in Barber of Seville. The main character and the title of the opera, The Barber of Seville, is Figaro. Now Figaro is a bit of a rascal. He's a barber, and he's worked for the Count Almaviva in the past. He tends to get around, and Almaviva bumps into him in Seville, and they agree to work together again to try and get the girl that Almaviva's after. And throughout the opera you will see the two of them in cahoots, devising plots, failing, coming back and trying again. And it's a lovely little relationship, because particularly in this production we're trying to show that they weren't just friends, but there was also a class structure. There is the Count, and then there is the Barber, and every now and again the Count reminds the Barber that he is of a higher class, and every now and again he realizes that no matter what class he is from, the Barber has got better ideas, and without him he can't get the woman. So their relationship is quite close, and it sort of swaps in and out of being very, very friendly on a sort of level playing field, to every now and again just a reminder coming in that the Count is a man of higher standing. Then of course there is Rossini. This is the girl that the Count is chasing and he's in love with, and he doesn't get a lot of contact with her throughout the opera, mainly because she's walled up in this house and he's trying to get in. But she has a rather interesting relationship with her ward, who is Dr. Bartolo. Initially, the Count is under the impression that they are married, or that they are to be engaged, but finds out that he's actually only her guardian. And the relationship between Rosina and an older man, who's about 60, a doctor, is rather an interesting one, and there's an awful lot of humour woven into that relationship, into those two characters. So that's certainly a relationship worth watching. It develops in a wonderful way. And then, of course, there is the other trouble causer. This is Don Basilio, who is a bass role, is played by, is involved in teaching Rosina music. And he's also a bit of a sly one who is a bit on the take if he can. In fact, he and Figaro, if you were to look at their two characters, are similar. They're both sort of rogues, both out to make a fast buck. But Figaro is a sort of nice rogue. Basilio's a little bit more slimy, and you're not quite sure whether you would trust him. The Count uses the fact that Don Basilio is a music teacher to gain access to the house, claiming that he is Don Basilio's replacement. Don Basilio's off sick, so he comes dressed as a mini Don Basilio and gets into the house that way. That's one of his disguises. And those are the main characters. There's one other character, singing part, and that is Berta. She's the old maid in the house, in Dr. Bartolo's house. She has her own aria, and she has her own character, which comes out wonderfully in the aria. And she's basically not only a small character, but also she presents the audience with a slightly outside view on the goings-on in the house, which is quite interesting, and sort of tells a story, I suppose, as the audience perceives it. An old man, a younger woman, and all the nonsense going on in the house. So those are the main characters in the opera. My character is called Count Almaviva. He is basically the lover and the tenor, as usual. Now, Count Almaviva, the part is actually quite an interesting part, because throughout the opera, Count Almaviva appears in disguise. First as a poor student, then to try and get into the house. Later he appears as a music teacher, and before that he appears as a drunk soldier. And in fact, throughout the opera, the only time you really see him as the Count is right at the very end, when he reveals himself to Rosina. So from a personal point of view, it's an interesting role to play. You have to be able to play. You have to be able to playing a part when you come on disguised as various characters. So it gives you the opportunity to try out some new voices. It gives you the opportunity to do some bad acting, just to show the audience that the Count wasn't a brilliant actor, but he's doing his best to come in disguise. So from that point of view, challenging. You're on a lot of the time on the stage, and interesting because you get to play 4 characters instead of 1. So a very interesting role, something I've done a number of times. Never gets any easier. But ultimately, he's the goody. He's looking for his love, and he gets her in the end. And despite all of his shenanigans, he's actually a sort of good rascal, as is his friend Figaro. Both of them full of fun, full of nonsense, having a good time out. And no harm is done in the end, and he ends up with a woman he really loves. Yeah, preparing for the role of Almaviva, I think, fortunately, I've done a number of productions now, but it's never very easy. Because you're on stage so much of the time, it takes an awful lot of stamina and more so concentration. You have to find your way through, not only the singing, but the acting and the real concentration. Comedy particularly is difficult to play because the timing is so important. And when you sing recits, it's very, very important that they flow very freely. so that the audience gets a sense of the story and can understand the story. And so yes, it's a very challenging role. It's, as I say, it never gets any easier, no matter how many times you do it. And I find particularly, you know, in Act 1 you're on stage. Act 1's over in about an hour and 20 minutes, I think. I'm on stage hour and 10 minutes of that, and Act 2 is an hour. I'm on stage 55 minutes of that. So yes, it's challenging. It's tricky. In the original score, there is an aria for the tenor right at the end called Cessa di più resistere, which is cut in this production. It's cut in most productions. It's a very dramatic aria. It's about 10 minutes of singing, maybe 8 to 10 minutes of singing, which comes right at the end of the opera. So when that's in, that's even more of a challenge. But from a dramatical point of view, it's generally cut because it tends to stop the action right near the end of the opera, and I think the director just wants to get to the end by then, and maybe the audience just wants a happy conclusion by then. But yes, it's a very challenging role. It never gets any easier, mainly from a stamina point of view and from a concentration point of view. Well, Rossini was one of those wonderful composers who wrote incredibly joyous music. Very difficult to sing technically, but incredibly exciting. And Barber of Seville is no exception. It's full of fantastic tunes. Most of them don't belong to the tenor, which is rather annoying, but you'll all recognize the theme tune from the Barber of Seville, which belongs to Figaro, who is the Barber of Seville, the one that goes la 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 la. So you look out for that one. It's an easy one because he just has to sing la, he doesn't need the words. And as I say, the music is wonderfully joyful, very, very quick, very upbeat, never leaves you bored for a minute, and yeah, fantastic, fantastic music. Rossini did write some serious operas, which came later in his career, but The Barber of Seville is one of those fantastic comedies with joyous music, bubbly, full of fast runs, and it just keeps going at a pace really worth seeing.